Zooey Mama! How's it going, everybody? I'm here today to talk about the new season coming to Marvel Snap. I cannot believe it's so close. I feel like we just started the May season with Blink, but June season is right around the corner. We've got 5 new cards, including the season pass card Gilgamesh, because we have the Eternals season. Okay, so if you did see the Eternals movie, you may already be familiar with some of these cards, and I'm going to go over all these cards, their current stats, current abilities. They are just data mined, so it's not official until we see Second Dinner's season announcement video. So we may see, some cards get like +1 or +2 power, maybe some cost changes. Those are kind of rare, and I don't expect really any ability changes because the season is so close, okay? But it is data mined. It's not official yet. Let's go ahead and start with our season pass card, Gilgamesh. So on June 4th, the new season kicks off where Gilgamesh is the season pass card that you can get for $10. And he is a 5-cost, 7-powered card with an on-reveal ability to gain +1 power for each of your other cards in play with increased power. So this is pretty interesting. It's different than Sebastian Shaw, right? Sebastian Shaw powered up himself when he gained permanent power. With Gilgamesh, he's powering up himself when other cards have gained power, and the cards don't need to have gained permanent power. Okay, so Sebastian Shaw didn't get buffed by ongoing effects like Blue Marvel. Gilgamesh counts that. I mean, if you just had 6 cards on the board, and then you played Blue Marvel turn 5, Blue Marvel's giving +1 power to each of those 6 cards. Okay, they all have increased power. You play Gilgamesh, he's going to gain +6, okay, because he's going to count Blue Marvel. He will count stuff that gets boosted by like Bast. Maybe you had, I don't know, Silver Surfer. He should count stuff that got flipped by Mr. Negative. I mean, there's a lot of ways to actually increase his power. Maybe even, powered up Brood, and Brood with the Broodlings give him +3. There's a lot of ways to really do it. You can be creative, but he is just a stat stick card overall, so we're really going to have to see if it's worth it. Okay, with stat 6 cards, if they consistently get to a solid power level and sometimes incredible power level, then they're really good, maybe even OP, but they'll see a lot of play. If they cannot consistently go very high, they're just not worth it. And Gilgamesh is a 5-cost card, so we are going to have to see how big he can get, and he might actually be better on turn 6. Again, he's on reveal, so you'd want to play him after something like Blue Marvel. But we'll have to see, really what his ceiling looks like. So to give my early ratings for Gilgamesh, while we look at his season pass variant, if you do get to level 50 of the season pass track and you bought the season pass, you will get this variant. In terms of being fun, no, he's actually not a good season pass card in my opinion for his ability. Basically the most boring season pass card since January, where we had Scar, because he's just a stat stick. He's not really helping you make a new archetype probably, and he's not doing anything too crazy. Okay, your other cards are doing stuff crazy. In terms of being flexible, I think he's okay. I've talked about Blue Marvel a lot, but you may also just have a deck where you're like playing Angela, Kitty Pryde, who powers herself up. Maybe you've got Elsa to power stuff up. Maybe just have an easy way to power up like 5 cards, which makes Gilgamesh a 5/12, but that's not crazy. So in order to make him really big, especially if you're playing him on turn 6, he needs to be really big because you could just be playing Red Hulk instead. In order to make him really big, I do think you need to work a bit for him. So you need a deck that really just looks to power up the board. And then in terms of being competitive, I think he might be good, depending on how big he gets. Again, if his average is like a 5/10, I don't think that's crazy. But if you have a deck that's already powering up cards, again, Angela, Kitty Pryde, Bishop, maybe Bishop makes her return, I don't know, right? And even, slap down Blue Marvel or something, then he could really just consistently be a good option there. I don't think he's carrying a deck because I don't think he gets crazy powerful, but he might just be a good option, and we'll have to see. But I don't think he's the best choice for an ability for a season pass card. So in the first week of the new season in Spotlight Caches, we have Thena, aka Angelina Jolie. Thena is a 2-cost 1 powered card with the ability that after each turn plus 3 power if you played exactly 2 cards that turn. Okay, so kind of like Angela, right? It's a 2 card with low base power and it's looking to power up with certain conditions. So with Thena, she's going to gain power if you only played 2 cards that turn, but 2 cards exactly. And this works great with Kitty Pryde, just like Angela. But if you did maybe Thena on turn 2, Angela plus Kitty Pryde on turn 3, Angela plus Kitty Pryde, that's 2 cards that turn. Thena would then get +3, okay? So if you're not playing Kitty Pryde, you might run out of cards in your hand. She could probably get to, maybe a 2/7 super consistently. You may have some games where you want to slap down 3 cards or only play one big thing. But I do think she's very similar to Angela. And what's interesting here with Thena, it's after each turn. So she's not even horrible on turn 6, because on turn 6, that's still a turn. You could play Thena plus a 4-cost card, and that's playing 2 cards that turn, even though one of them was Thena. And so she would at least be a 2/4. Okay, I think really at worst, she's a 2/4. It's hard to imagine her as just a 2/1. But her ceiling is really good. I mean, technically, you could play a 0-cost card with Thena on turn 2. So she could power up on turn 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. I mean, that's a lot of turns. That would make her like a 2/16. That would be really good, right? +3 power is no joke. It's an interesting condition, though. We'll have to see how much she fights for that spot. Again, I think she fits in a lot of decks that Angela and Elsa already do. And so she might kind of compete with them too much. But it's another strong 2-cost card, so maybe Angela Thena is just like a common combo. So here is the Spotlight variant for Thena, who's, by the way, in Spotlights alongside Grandmaster and Gladiator. I don't think I mentioned that yet, but they got some cool variants as well. In terms of being fun, for Thena, I think she's okay. She's not as boring as just a stat stick or even as Gilgamesh, because it makes you think, do I want to just play 2 cards this turn? Do I want to just play this one big thing and lose the 3 power? Like, you kind of have to play around with it, okay? It makes it really interesting. And even if you're just going with Kitty Pryde, you're essentially playing one other card under curve that's, less energy than what you have, and then you're just slapping down Kitty Pryde to fill the energy and fill the 2-card requirement. In terms of being flexible, I think she's okay. Kind of like Angela, right? Not every deck wants an Angela, but she's got a couple different homes. She pretty much just likes cheaper stuff. In terms of being competitive, I do think she's good. Even if you only trigger her twice, and I don't think you need to even dedicate a deck for her, you can find a lot of decks. Put her in, she'll trigger twice. Played on turn 2 or turn 3. That's a 2/7. You trigger her 3 times, she's a 2/10. It's already worth it. Okay, if you can just trigger Thena 3 times, that's solid. That's pretty strong. So I do think that Thena has potential to see a good amount of play, become a meta card, become a staple. And I'm interested to see, what deck or decks come out that, really take advantage of her and just get her to like some crazy numbers. Next up, we have Sersi, who comes out in Spotlights on June 11th alongside Phoenix Force and Meek. And Sersi, I'm not loving this artwork. I like her Spotlight variant. This one, I'm not a huge fan of, unfortunately. But she is a 5-cost 7-powered card with the On Reveal ability to transform your other cards here at her location into random cards that cost 1 more, if able. This is crazy. Okay, this is like, it's just madness, right? If you have a location where maybe you have a 1, a 2, and a 3-cost card, you place Sersi there, she's going to transform all of them into random cards that cost 1 more. So instead of having a 1, 2, and 3, she's going to transform them into a 2, a 3, and a 4, and who knows what they're going to be. They might have on reveal abilities that are good for you, that are bad for you, right? It's going to be really interesting. I think she often does win her lane. I mean, if you're taking 3 cards and you're just randomizing them to something that costs 1 more, well, you were probably changing on reveal cards that maybe had good effects but not crazy power. And you're probably turning them into stuff that on average is just more powerful. Okay, so she probably does win her lane. It can be a bit risky, right? If you transform to 5-cost card, maybe you get Destroyer and you lose. So I don't know what you do there. But I think maybe you just play her on turn 6 and not hit any 5-cost cards to avoid Destroyer. There will be some shenanigans here. But this is really interesting ability. If this happened across the board, it might be broken. But just one lane, I think it's a fun way to do it. So here's a close-up of Sersi's Spotlight variant. I do actually really like this one. I might have to go for it. In terms of being fun, I think she's amazing. This is going to be crazy, okay? Sometimes you're just going to see wild stuff come out. Like your opponent maybe plays Sersi, and they start getting good stuff, but then they pop out like Viper, and it sends, their 5/7 Sersi or something else really good to your side of the board. Maybe they have 1-cost cards, and they pop out Killmonger. I mean, you're just going to see some wild stuff. You could play her on turn 5, but if you do get something like Havoc or, just saying that discards cards from your hand, that messes up your turn 6. So I think you actually play Sersi on turn 6, but we're going to see wild stuff either way. In terms of being flexible, yeah, I think you could play her a lot if you want to, okay? I think there's a lot of decks, especially just cheap card decks, where you just have some small cards there, okay, even if you did like bounce or something, you end up kind of just having some crap on the board. Maybe even have rocks, right? Maybe you play debris and you've got rocks on the board. You want to turn those into 2-cost cards. Maybe they have like 5 power, right? You could just slap her in. In terms of being competitive, I don't know. Again, I think she wins her lane. I really do think she can easily win her own lane, kind of like a card like Cannonball can, or even just a big stat stick can. But she's not helping out your other lanes. She may not always win your lane, right? If you just pop out Carnage or Deathlock, she just destroyed everything, and now you're not very happy. Whereas a card like Cannonball can consistently win its lane. So I don't think she's as consistent. She's not helping out your other lanes. She's a 5-cost card. I think is better on turn 6. She does add 7 power, but it could be lost depending on what she comes up with. I just think it's going to be crazy, though. I think she's awesome. I'm very excited to see highlight clips of Sersi immediately after she comes out. Next up, we've got Makkari coming out in Spotlights on June 18th alongside X23 and MODOK. Okay, pretty specific archetype Spotlight cache here. X23 for destroy, MODOK for discard. Makkari is a 3-cost, 3-powered card with the ability that after the turn, runs from your hand to a random location, if possible. So it's kind of like M'Baku, where M'Baku, at the end of the game, runs from your deck, if he's still there, to a random location. But Makkari just does it on the turn you draw her. Basically, if you drew Makkari turn 1, she's going to slap herself down on the board at the end of turn 1, okay? So it's pretty nice for gaining priority, actually, and she can get to locations that normally you couldn't play on. Maybe she gets to Sanctum Sanctorum or Death's Domain, right? Because you're not playing her, she just goes from your hand, kind of like Proxima Midnight or Angel or M'Baku. So this is really an interesting ability. So in terms of being fun, I think she's okay. It's going to be funny when she jumps to Borrow No Name and you're really sad. Or if she jumps to a location that you didn't want to fill, maybe you had 3 cards there and you drew her on turn 4 or 5 and she just filled the location for you, right? Because she goes to a random location. It's not like Proxima Midnight where it's targeted to lowest power location. It does go to a random one. So sometimes it's going to suck and that's going to be kind of funny. But normally she's not super fun. She's just 3 power that goes somewhere on the board. In terms of being flexible, yeah, she's okay. You could play her in a Cerebro deck, Cerebro 3. You could play her in a Surfer deck. You could just play her in some random deck where you really focus on priority. Maybe a Lockdown deck if you're going for like Storm Legion, right? You're just trying to get as much power on the board as early as possible. So it has some potential there. But in terms of being competitive, I think she might suck. I'm going to say it. I think Makkari might be really bad. I think it's an interesting ability. I think it's cool. But there's a problem. Okay, let's say even you have her in a Surfer deck, and she seems good for Surfer, right? She's a 3-cost card. She plays herself for free. Surfer can power her up later. It's all great. Well, she's going to a random location. Okay, that has its own set of problems. She's only 3 power. It's not like you're getting something crazy. Even if you power it up at Surfer, it's going to 5. But she's going away from your hand. I mean, you had to draw her, and then she plays herself. So when you drew her, you didn't draw a different card that actually has an ability, right? If you drew your Makkari, maybe you would have drawn your Sebastian Shaw instead. You're losing a card from your hand. And so sometimes you're going to feel that. Sometimes you're going to be like, man, I've got nothing to play. It would have been nice if I had an extra card in my hand, but I drew Makkari and she played herself. So she might actually get in the way of drawing the cards you actually need, and she's going to go to some annoying location. So I don't think she's worth playing. I don't think a Surfer deck really wants her. I don't think a Cerebro deck really wants her. What if she goes to a location where it powers her up? I mean, it's a bit risky, okay? Makkari is a little bit risky. Often she'll just play herself on turn 1, and you don't even know what those locations are going to be. So we'll have to see, but I don't have high hopes. I'm thinking they might buff her power a bit. I think they keep her cost at 3, but maybe by the time they announce official season pass video, she's maybe a 3-4 or even a 3-5, in which case she could potentially have a good home in Surfer, but I think she's a bit of a liability, and I don't think she adds enough to really give her value needed to be one of the 12 cards in your deck. And lastly, we've got potentially the best card of the June season, Phastos. I think it's Phastos and not Phastos. I'm just going to call him Phastos. He comes out June 25th in Spotlights alongside Spider-Ham and Corvus Glaive. Okay, pretty solid Spotlight cashier. He's a 3-cost, 3-powered card with the on-reveal ability to give each card in your deck -1 cost or +2 power. This is interesting, okay? This is really, really interesting. I mean, you've got cards like Okoye, who will just give everything in your deck +1 power, okay? But Okoye doesn't see a ton of play. Yeah, you can try and, hit like Brood or Sebastian Shaw, but if you already drew them in hand, they're not getting powered up. Or if you play Okoye, but then you don't draw those cards, or if you draw Okoye late. So Phastos has the same kind of thing, right? But there are bigger stakes. It could be +2 power instead of +1. I mean, +2 power hitting a Shaw or Brood is like really good. Or it could be -1 cost, right? If you could just draw all your cards and they're all cheaper, that's amazing. But it's either or. I mean, you just don't know. If you're playing a Surfer deck, he's a 3-cost card. He could work in Surfer. If you draw him late game, it's not so great. If you draw him, you have him to play right on turn 3, then you could end up with really good stuff. But you have to play what you draw, okay? When you play Phastos, if your next draw is like Sarah, that's great. You have a 4-cost Sarah. But if Sarah's already in hand, she's not getting any benefit. Or if Sarah's drawing after that, it's not really any benefit, right? You still have to draw the cards. So it's a tough situation, but man, these are good things. Like giving -1 cost or +2 power, that's going to add a lot. If you have a way to draw these cards and play them, they're going to have good bonuses. That power bonus, but especially the -1 cost, I think could create some crazy games. If you just high roll it and get really lucky, that could be nuts. So my ratings for Phastos, in terms of fun, I think he's good. I think he solved himself. It's exciting. It's kind of like, playing Pixie, where you kind of just don't know what happens. Even if you know which cards are in your deck with Phastos, you don't know if they got the -1 cost or if they got the +2 power, right? You may be hoping for one of those, but you just don't know until you draw them and see. That's kind of exciting. In terms of being flexible, I think he's okay. He does really need to come down right on turn 3. You're really hoping him to get right away. You could do like Phastos into Absorbing Man or something, but I think there's going to be a somewhat small selection of decks that want him, but he doesn't just need Silver Surfer. He's got a couple homes, especially if you do have ways to draw cards, maybe like Jane Foster, right? If you have 1-cost cards in your deck and he gives them -1 cost, they're now 0, Jane Foster can draw them. So there's some ways you can work with him and be creative. In terms of being competitive, I think he's good. Okay, I'm not sure if he's OP, specifically because you need to draw the cards that he powers up or discounts the cost and play them, okay? And I don't know if you can always do that. Again, if you draw Phastos after turn 3, you probably just don't play him. It may not be worth it. You do want to have ways to draw cards. Maybe you play Magic to extend the game. But if he's just given the +2 power, I think that's not so good. Imagine you did that. Imagine you got Phastos down on turn 3 or turn 4, and the next 2 cards you drew, you wanted to play them. They're good for you in the game, and they have +2 power each. That's great. Well, that basically makes Phastos a 3/7. That's not crazy. Okay, a 3/7 is not crazy. If he's a 3/3, that gave +2 to 2 other cards. But if he did give those cards -1 cost, and now you're actually able to play more of them or get like a turn 4 Sarah, like I mentioned, that could go really big. So I think he's got a high ceiling, but kind of a low floor. He's got a bit of a range. It's hard to really rank where he's going to be competitively. I think a lot of people are going to be hyped on him, and he might not reach that level. Some people might think he's going to be really bad, and he's going to be better than that. I think he's kind of in there. I think he's going to be good, but it's really hard to say. I'm really excited for Phastos and to see where he falls. So those are all the cards that we have coming out in this June season, the Eternal season for Marvel Snap. We had Gilgamesh, Thena, Sersi, Makkari, and Phastos. And out of those, I'm most excited for Thena, Sersi, and Phastos. Okay, I'm most interested in seeing how these cards do, how they perform. I think Thena for sure is going to find a home in the meta in at least one deck, okay? It's probably alongside Angela and Kitty Pryde is what I believe. Sersi is going to be pretty crazy. She might be like a sleeper card like Cannonball that doesn't seem good right away. Maybe she gets good later. Maybe it needs some other cards to get nerfed and then she gets good or something. And then Phastos, again, I'm really interested. He could be bad. He could be a flop, but he could also be really good. We're going to have to see how he does and what kind of decks people have with him if you have ways to draw cards out. Gilgamesh and Makkari, I'm not thinking Makkari's going to be good. Gilgamesh might be kind of good, but he's not super exciting. So I think we'll kind of know how good he's going to be even before he comes out. So those are my thoughts on this June season. Let me know what you think of these cards, which of these 5 you are most excited for, and what deck you think they're going to work in, right? Or any of these cards just like a game changer in a deck where you think it might just be overpowered or they're going to be crazy all over the meta. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. And until then, stay positive. I'll see you next time.